Is that agreed? Would you like to come up to the front? Can we also nominate a vice chair as well? Is that agreed? Okay.
Wrong button. Good evening, everyone. 6 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Just would like to remind the members that this committee meeting is being streamed live, so on your best behaviour, please. So, apologies for absence.
We received apologies from Councillor Surgeon and Councillor Ibrahim. Councillor Charters is here as a sub.
Thank you. Is there any urgent business? None received. Item 4, declarations of interest from anyone? No? We'll move on to public question time. There's no public questions, is there?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, are they approved? Someone move them? Thank you. Any questions on them? Observations? No? Item 7, which is a shore distribution centre. The process for items is that one of the officers will move the application, and then we'll open it up to questions to members of the officer, and then after that we'll invite the applicant or the objector, and they'll have 3 minutes to speak, and you'll be reminded that your 3 minutes are coming up in 30 seconds prior to your 3 minutes. So I'll move on to Graham Dickman, who will present the application to us. Over to you, Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to start off with a bit of housekeeping in terms of the application. Some members may have noticed or may not have noticed, because I didn't notice, that in the report the reference to the application begins with an FUL. The actual reference should be RES. It might sound like a minor thing, but we just need to obviously make sure that what decision committee are making is on the correct application. And also, obviously, members have all seen the late list, and there are some changes to the initial report on there as well. So that's just to get us started. Members who've been on the committee for a little while, certainly in 2022, will have come across this site a couple of times when there've been applications before you in terms of the outline proposal for the site, and then a subsequent application for the phasing of the development of the site for residential purposes. So this is the site itself, or this is the largest site. This is the site for which the original outline permission was granted. The bottom end of the site, southern end of the site, is actually still in operation as a distribution depot. So the application itself relates to the northern end of the site, which you'll see from the slide shortly. From here you can see it's got buildings on it. All those buildings have subsequently been removed. So that's the top end of the site you can see on the left hand side. The view you can see on the right is taken from the outline application. It's like an indicative layout to give an idea of what would actually be on the site. And the main feature you can see from that on the kind of right hand side, if you've got good eyesight, there's a blue stream, that's the River Beal running through the site, and then there's an area of open space which is related to the flood prevention on that area of the site as well. And you'll see shortly that the layout that's been proposed basically reflects that proposal. So this is just a view of the Linney Lane frontage to the site prior to obviously the development taking place. The site's obviously on the left hand side, and these are a couple of views of the site that exists at the moment. So obviously most of the clearance work is now, if not all the clearance work, has now taken place on the site. It adjoins on its western boundary onto the Metrolink line, which is at a lower level, and you see that with the Linney Lane Bridge just in the first view there. There's some trees along that boundary, and obviously those trees will need to be removed as part of the proposals, and then there'll be various elements of protective fencing between that and the residential development. There's an area of existing trees at the frontage to the site as well, and they're actually being removed, and you'll see there's a reference in the report from comments of the trees officers had some concerns about that, but going back to the initial layout scheme, that does reflect what was shown on the indicative plans, and there will, again, as you'll see on a later slide, there's replacement planting throughout the site. So this is the layout as proposed. The brown coloured in buildings are the affordable housing units on the site. So again, you'll see from the late list, the number of properties overall on this area of the site was 140, is now 130. As a percentage of that, then also there's been a reduction from 28 to 26, the affordable units. The other element of that is that there was a small apartment block on the site, and that's now been removed following revisions to the layout that have taken place. As a result, all the properties on the site will now be two-storey. So as you can see, the majority of the development is on the western side of the River Beal. That will then be opened up and running a channel through the site. There's a smaller area with a separate access that runs behind Linney Lane Motors, just in the top northeast corner of the site. You see it's a fairly standard layout that you would expect on the site. The southern boundary, probably worth noting that at the moment the properties along that line will adjoin onto the retained distribution depot for perhaps a number of years to come, and as a result of that there's additional acoustic screening that's being put in on that element of the site. Eventually those units will back on probably to depending on the subsequent layout, to additional residential properties. These are the indicative house types, and as I say, they're now all two-storey throughout the site. Mixed of detached, semi-detached and short terrace properties. And this is just to show you, as I say, I mentioned about the River Beal, and initially it's in part culvert throughout the site. That will be opened up throughout the length of the site, and obviously then will become an important feature of the site, both in terms of the drainage and the landscaping. And this is the landscape layout, and again you can see throughout the site various tree plantings throughout the plots themselves and in relation to the open space, which is sufficient to outweigh the loss of the tree planted at the front of the site in terms of the UDP policy for the number of replacement trees. And finally, that's the site layout again. So what we're asking members to consider is not the principle of the site, but the actual reserved matters details, so the appearance of the scheme, the layout and the landscaping and the scale of the buildings that are being proposed on site. As I say, it meets the standards in terms of separation distances throughout the layout and so forth. It has additional attraction due to obviously the open space and the opening up of the River Beal channel throughout the site. A number of conditions are on there in relation to this particular scheme, but all the original conditions which relate to the outline application, so things like dealing with the drainage scheme, ground contamination and so forth, they will be dealt with separately through a condition discharge application which we currently have. It's not been completed at the moment because we're still waiting agreement from various consultees. So even if committee grant this approval tonight, the applicant still needs to deal with those separate issues. So on that basis it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Dickman. Are there any questions? Councillor Hints?
Thank you, Chair. As a resident of Shaw myself, I welcome this development. I think it's a great use of a brownfield site, and it's important that we categorise them first and protect other areas within our community. I don't know if it's a question you could possibly ask, but I was just looking at the affordable housing, which again I'm thankful it's been revisited and the details have changed from 2-bedroomed apartments to more in need 3-bedroomed houses. But looking at the affordable houses, I just wondered why they're all at the edge of the site. Is that a conscious decision?
Chair, it's probably not one that I can actually answer, but the applicant is here tonight, so may be able to provide comment on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Horbin, do you not put your hand up? Pickle, we didn't let you chair the meeting, is that what it is? Are there any other quick? Councillor Harkness.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this might be to the applicant, because obviously on the late list, it's been reduced from 140 to 130, and it was 4, 3 and 2 bedroom houses, and now it's just the 4 and 3 bedroom. Was that part of like discussions to make sure that the project could work, you know, with the planning department, or is that just a decision, a late decision by the applicant that they want to do that now?
That really is a decision that the applicant has made. The amendments to the layout were quite often, as a result, my colleague Wendy here, in terms of the highway layout issues on the site.
Councillor, oh, you got your hand up, Pete?
No.
Right, Councillor Hinds.
Thank you, Chair. As I say, it's only my second meeting, so please excuse my naivety, perhaps. If a development is proposed in a certain area, i.e. in Shaw, does the developer give any funding or anything to the local community, perhaps, or something that because obviously we want people to come and move into Shaw, but Shaw's obviously in heavy need of investment, in particular in the town centre. So I would have thought, just from a business point of view, which this is, by contributing and help restore the town centre to its to where it should be, would be actually a good way of bringing in potential buyers.
Peter.
So in terms of what we can consider in planning, the answer would be no in that kind of situation, what you're describing about the town centre. Obviously, as part of the outline application for this site, certain Section 106 contributions were agreed, including the affordable housing provision and other things. And obviously they're required, or they were required as part of that permission, to make the development acceptable in planning terms. But in terms of what you're describing around, for example, enhancement of the town centre and what have you, that's a separate issue that we couldn't require the developer to
Sorry, just to come back at you then, can you confirm that monies have been paid to Oldham Council, as in not for affordable housing, but you just intimated that there could have been some?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't confirm that. I'll have to go and look it up. I think the key thing is there are certain triggers in the Section 106 agreement after a certain amount of development or a certain point in the development where they would have to make the contributions. Graham, is there anything you can add?
Yeah, we actually have received payments, and in fact some of those payments have come in advance. So as I say, it's now being done as a 2-phase scheme, but there are elements of the payments have actually been paid in full up front.
That's excellent news. Will then payments be channelled to Shaw and Crompton, where obviously this development is having an impact, or does it go in one of these central pots, which I'm hearing a lot about, where the council can distribute it wherever they see fit?
So the whole purpose of a Section 106 agreement is to, say, make the development acceptable in planning terms. So the contribution is quite specific in a Section 106 agreement about what it can go on and where it can be spent.
Councillor
so again,
Hull,
without
before you come in, could you please go through the chair? We're not.
Apologies, Chair.
and so I'd have to look at the details of the Section 106 agreement to confirm exactly what they are for you, and we can do that separately, obviously. It's part of the outline anyway, it's not part of the matters for tonight. But yeah, that's how it tends to work, and it's not very often that we would collect something collect a contribution from a development like this and spend it in a different part of the borough. It's not normal unless there's a particularly strategic matter.
Yeah, that's not normal practice. It's usually spent within the area where the development is. But can you take those issues up with Peter after the meeting and then...
Absolutely, Chair, and we'll be monitoring the situation closely.
Yeah, thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Charters?
Thanks, Chair. It's just a quick question about the fact that it's a two-phase development. I noticed that Graham said earlier that the bottom end of the development is still in employment use and is still being used as a distribution centre. Is there any sort of conditions around noise abatement that's being put on so that residents are not disturbed by the... I mean, obviously, there's a certain element of noise that comes with moving next to an operating warehouse, but is there any thing around, like, plant of trees on that specific boundary, or...?
Yeah, as I say, that along that southern boundary, we actually have got a 4 metre high acoustic fence that's being put in place. Obviously, that will only effectively be necessary whilst they're there, unless, of course, there are some very noisy neighbours on the second phase of the development. But, of course, in addition to that, you've got a boundary that adjoins the tram tracks. So, obviously, there is a permanent, again, lower, because there's a difference in levels on there and a difference in the nature of the noise. But again, another 2.4 metre high fence that is acoustic in its design. So there's it ensures that those two potential noise generating uses that the residents, and there are various schemes of sound insulation that are being put in for the properties themselves, and where windows have to be closed, mechanical ventilation schemes. So again, you're seeing the conditions is reference to an acoustic report, and that sets out in detail those matters. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gloucester?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about conditions of operation. I can't see anything in the conditions list, and obviously residents have had significant disturbance while the mill's being demolished, so I just want to check that there is a condition going in on that, please.
The condition is on the outline, so that's where the issue should have been dealt with, and they need to continue. Well, obviously at some point perhaps haven't, but continue, because that would in the demolition contractor. But again, the restrictions that are in the agreed environmental management scheme would have to be still applied to the actual construction elements of the development, so we don't repeat that at reserved matter stage. Chair.
I can't see any further hands up, so we'll move on to the speaker. We've got one person who's asked to speak, and that's the applicant, Alice Henderson. Alice, you've got 3 minutes. When you've got 30 seconds left, we'll let you know. Yeah, if you press that button, the light should come on.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks, Chair, and good evening, everyone. My name is Alice, and I am Bellway's planning agent. So, first of all, thanks very much to Graham for the positive recommendation for approval and for officers' hard work on this application. As Graham's highlighted, the principle of housing development on this site has been approved through the outline planning permission, and this application seeks approval of the reserve matters, so appearance, landscaping, layout and scale for the first phase of development for 130 homes. The application is acceptable for the following reasons. So firstly, the principal means of access to the site was approved through the outline permission. As Graham's mentioned, this will be a reconfiguration of the existing site access from Linney Lane, and then 12 units to the east of the River Beal will be served by a secondary access also from Linney Lane. The proposed development is for 130 units, including 26 affordable units, and there will be a mix of 3 and 4 bedroom mews, semi-detached and detached properties. Green and blue infrastructure is a focal point of the development, with the deculverting of the River Beal, which will create a substantial area of open space with new habitat creation, tree planting, and also pedestrian and cycle links throughout the site. The development will also achieve a 10% biodiversity net gain and a 3-to-1 replacement planting to mitigate any tree loss on site. The layout's been designed to accord with the approved outline parameters and will create a network of attractive streets and spaces. Properties are oriented onto Linney Lane and also towards the new open space around the River Beal to create a very pleasant environment. No objections have been raised from internal and statutory consultees, and we've been through a collaborative process with officers and consultees. So overall, this development will deliver 130 new homes on a brownfield site and will also enable the creation of extensive new areas of public open space. So we respectfully request that members grant permission in line with officer recommendation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. I don't know who can clarify this. When you say affordable housing, that are marked off as affordable housing, what does that mean on this occasion?
So on this occasion, all the affordable housing will be discounted market units. So that was agreed as part of the outline planning permission and the Section 106 associated with that. What that means is that they'll be sold at discounted market rates. So it will be 80%, got it in the end, 80% of open market value on the affordable units. No worries.
Councillor Bashworth.
Thank you, Chair. Alice, I was just going to ask a similar question, but who would qualify, first of all, who would qualify for the affordable, the 80% discount? Well, 20% discount, sorry. 80% would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so I don't think there's any specific criteria that I know of in terms of, you know, income, but essentially I believe the council has a register of eligible households and then they will be sort of given the opportunity to purchase the properties.
The general practice, Steve, is first-time buyers on 20% discount, I was going to say.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just a little bit out of touch. Yeah. So, the second part of the question, Chair, so you've done your calculations for the affordable housing and there's 26 units, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so how robust are those calculations? Are you going to come back to us in a couple of months saying you can't afford it now and you're taking them up?
No, they very much will be delivered. The principle of that has already been agreed through the outline, so we are committed to providing those and they will be provided as per the proposals.
That's Section 106 condition, that. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Alice, how are you today? You okay?
Hi, yeah, all good. I'm just getting used to the microphone.
Yeah, they're,
sorry about that.
They're tricky, aren't they? A bit 70s. Just going back to the affordable housing, just from my knowledge, in terms of the layout and the position of them, because it doesn't look random to me, is there a criteria that you have to group them together, or is that a strategy? I don't know. It's just a question.
Yeah, so a couple of things really. So, as Graham mentioned before, there was a design code that's been approved for the site. So that sort of dictated kind of higher density areas of the site. Generally speaking, in all developments, there needs to be a level of dispersion of affordable housing. So you don't want it to be just one cluster. I think in this case, given the sort of scale of the site, it's dispersed enough that it's, you know, integrated with the market housing, but there is always an element of clustering in that, you know, in delivering that you have it in sort of one place, but in this case it is kind of split into, I think, 2 or 3 separate sections, so it's dispersed across the site.
So just as a caveat, are they the cheaper houses then in terms of?
The affordable units will be the ones sold at discounted market rate.
Sold, I mean, in terms of?
Oh no, so the actual house types are indistinguishable from the market housing, so it won't be obvious, you know, walking past, there's the affordable units. They will be very much integrated into the development.
Thank you for your reassurance.
No worries.
Councillor Gloucester.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask what has happened to the two-bedroomed that we saw on the outline permission, please?
Sorry, to clarify, do you mean why there isn't any two bedrooms anymore? Yeah, so the reason that we are now just showing 3 and 4 bedrooms is largely due to the apartment block being omitted. So when the scheme that we first submitted had an apartment block which had 2-bedroom units in it, and we redesigned that particular part of the site following comments from Graham and Wendy, the highways officer, because there were some concerns around the apartment block and the parking associated with it, and then subsequently they were replaced with the dwellings, which is why there's no longer any 2 bedrooms proposed.
Can I follow up on that, please, Chair? So the whole site, when phase 2 comes forward, will that have any 2-bedroom properties?
Yeah, I mean, phase 2 will obviously be subject to a separate reserve matters application in the future, so I can't say for sure exactly what that mix would be, but I would anticipate that you would have a good mix of different size properties as part of phase 2. But at the outline stage, a specific percentage mix wasn't, specifically committed to.
I can't see any further hands up, so we'll move on to opening up the application to further questions from officers and a discussion between the members. Any further questions, observations?
Excuse me, Chair. Do you mind if I just clarify regarding the Section 106 query earlier?
Not now, no.
Okay, no worries.
We moved on, sorry. But there was a question, wasn't there?
In terms of... So,
are members clear on Section 106, or do you want further information?
Could you please clarify? Just, thank you.
as in clarify what was in the Section 106 agreement, or... So first of all, I mean, Graham, I think has dug it out while we've been talking, but as I say, it's not strictly relevant to the application tonight because it was part of the outline. So that's all. This has already been agreed, and obviously what is in the 106 can't influence our decision about this proposal tonight.
There were some contributions towards highway improvements, which I think have been paid for both phases, even though in the first phase. But more significantly than that, there's a contribution overall of 2.2 million. So 1.1 million has been paid part of this scheme for the expansion of primary and secondary school placements in Shaw, Crompton and Royton, and a contribution to NHS Oldham Clinical Commissioning Group for improvements to medical facilities in Shaw and Crompton.
Thank you.
Councillor Bashworth, you
Thanks. Just an observation, Chair. It looks a really nice scheme, this. A nice group of houses, and hopefully the people moving in, and Councillor Ince mentioned about the town centre, hopefully they will shop in the town centre and encourage growth in that. Just, Councillor Gloucester touched on the lack of 2-bedroom houses, and I think this is in no disrespect to the developer, it's a great job, but clearly the developer needs to make the profit to keep going, and that's fine. And that's probably to the detriment of 2-bedroom houses, which in a site like this in a town centre, would be really welcome. So all we've got, which is really nice what we've got, but we've got the higher end of the housing market, and people who probably would have benefited from a 2-bedroom house a little bit cheaper are not going to get that option in this phase. So I think it's just highlights, leaving whole of housing in our country to the private sector. I think we really do need to get some more public building, but it's just an observation. I think the scheme's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bashworth. Councillor Hints.
Just to come back to Councillor Bashford's observation there, which is obviously welcomed. For somebody who lives in Shaw and Crompton, just to put my thoughts is, actually, a large amount of the housing stock in Shaw and Crompton are 2-bedroom terraced houses, and there's various numerous the usual apartments, specifically in Shore Town Centre. So I think this is a real opportunity for families. I myself started off in a small house, and then we had children and we moved. And I'm actually quite pleased this development is actually more along the lines of 3-bedroom houses, and more specifically, there are a reasonable number of 3-bedroomed affordable houses. So it's not often I praise development, I must admit, but I think this is in line. I think it's a benefit to Shore and the community. My only concern is, in terms of the £2.2 million which is being earmarked, is the value of that spend and the current condition of Shore Town Centre, because when you go to buy a house, the first thing you check out is the location and the facilities and everything, and from a marketing point of view, let alone selling one, the current state of Shore Town Centre is detrimental. Thank you.
I sort of sympathise with you, but obviously in terms of planning, we can't bring the Shore Town Centre into the application. So does anybody want to move the application? Councillor Hintz?
Yes, I wish to move.
So we've got mover, seconded by Councillor Bashworth. All those in favour of the application? That's a unanimous decision. So the application is passed with the recommendations as outlined in section 14. Thank you. Move on to item 8, which is 6 Hunters Lane, Oldham. Martin, are you going to present this to us?
Give us a moment.
Okay, I'm moving too quickly, am I? Hey? Is that what it is?
Okay, thank you. So yes, agenda item 8. This is relating to 6 Hunters Lane in the town centre in Oldham. So the location on the screen here shows the site of the property. The application is primarily a change of use from a community use to an 8-bedroomed HMO, and it's been referred to committee for the sole reason that the applicant is a relation of Councillor Mushtaq. So in accordance with our constitution and scheme of delegation, for transparency reasons, that's the reason for it coming to committee. So the site on Hunters Lane, it is flanked either side, parallel with Grieve Street and Queen Street in the town centre. It is located within the town centre conservation area boundary, but it's not within the central shopping core. The property itself, I'll come back to the plans, but the property itself, which is on the image on the right in the background, it's a terrace brick 2-storey building, and it faces the car park that you can see on the image on the left, which is at a notably lower level to the actual site. So in terms of the proposal, the accommodation would be split across the two levels, the ground floor and the first floor, with 4 bedrooms on each, and also there's a cycle store proposed at ground floor, and a communal facility, so kitchen and dining space at the first floor level. There are some very minor alterations to the building itself. There is the blocking up of a window on the rear elevation, and the introduction of a first floor window on the side elevation, serving one of the proposed bedrooms. So the issues primarily for consideration relate to the principle of development, the impact of the development on the conservation area, the amenity of nearby users of buildings, occupiers, and the occupiers of the proposed development itself, and also whether the proposed use as a house in multiple occupation would have any detrimental impact on the established character of the existing area. So that's the framework for the consideration, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Are there any questions for the planning officer? Councillor Charters?
Thank you. Just a quick note on the proposal is a change of use from a community centre to a HMO, but then on the planning history it's already been changed from a community centre to a place of worship. Is that something we need to be taking into consideration if it's already a different thing?
Yeah, it is relevant, which is why it's in the report, of course. So there is a recent approval for place of worship. So if this is approved tonight, the property will essentially have the benefit of two alternative uses. Obviously, only one can be implemented. So yes, they're considered on their own merit. So it's still relevant. It's an extant planning permission that could be implemented, regardless of the outcome tonight. But if tonight it's approved, there would be the benefit of implementing either.
But just to clarify, if I may, Chair, just in terms of your question, while it has permission as a church, it's not been implemented yet. So that's why it's not a change of use from a church to a HMO. It's still a change of use from a community centre.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Councillor Horbin, Councillor Davis, and then Councillor Hinds.
Thank you, Chair. It's very hard to see on the pictures, Matthew, isn't it? The exterior of the place, is it going to alter in any way, shape or form? Is it going to look pretty much as it does now? It's not going to have an effect on the rest of the street and that? It's not going to stand out as a HMO, is it?
Yeah, so the proposed changes to the external elevations, as I said in the introduction, is just the blocking up of a window at first floor level on the rear and the introduction of one on the side at first floor level. So they're the proposed changes to the exterior of the building that require planning permission. But obviously there may be other works that are done to freshen up the property, if you like, that could happen without permission. So those are the elements for consideration, if you like, as part of the application, is just the windows. That's the change to the external appearance.
I'll ask the applicant about the actual building because he'll probably be best person to answer it. I think I know the building pretty well. But the other question is, which I will ask, is that there's been a lot of HMO applications in the town centre lately, quite a lot. I'm just wondering, I mean, are all the ones that have been approved been developed, and are they all taken up? Is there demand? That's the question, really. Is there demand for all these HMOs?
Peter?
Okay, so a few parts to that to answer. In terms of is there demand, that's not a matter that we can particularly consider. It's for the applicant or any other applicants of other properties to consider, you know, for their own commercial reasons, you know, are they likely to get tenants or not. But what we can consider ultimately is if there is a cluster, for example, of properties being converted to HMOs, and whether that would have an impact on the character of the area. Ultimately, in this area, while there's been, I think, one or two granted in the past couple of years, the overwhelming number of buildings in the area are still of a typical town centre use, and so I don't think there's a particular concern about that change of character at this point in time. I think we also have to always factor in, again with HMOs, is that they come with a sometimes an unsubstantiated bias against HMOs or their occupants, but ultimately it is just people living in a property. And this is so in the same way that we might consider, say for example, this conversion of this property to 2 flats. You know, we have to think of it in that context, that actually the idea of residential development in a town centre is acceptable. It's not necessarily going to cause harm. And in terms of HMOs in particular, there's not yet a cluster in this area that would cause a change to the character.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Hinds.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on a point my fellow councillor rightly acknowledged, and it's just something I can't quite understand. So if a property is granted permission to be something, i.e. a centre of religion, and then he wants to change it potentially to for another function, i.e. in this case a business, does one supersede the other, or effectively do them two planning decisions are live? So in other words, you could put another one in and say, I want it to be a bar. I could put another one in and say, I want it to be a... Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, thank you. It's certainly an interesting question and potentially quite difficult to answer. So I think the easiest way of explaining it is looking at it sequentially, what happens on the ground. So if, for example, the previous permission was implemented for the place of worship, then it would operate within a planning use class relevant to that use. And then there's freedom through the use classes order to operate for other types of uses within the same use class. If it's brought into use, if this application is approved as a HMO, again, the circumstances about whether it's put into use for other types of uses and whether it needs permission would be different. So it's always looking at what's actually been implemented to then move on to, is planning permission then required for an alternative use should a proposal come forward?
Are you okay with that explanation? Or has it confused you more?
It is. I do find it confusing. There's just one other question which probably would sit with me a bit better. If a planning application is put in, are they time bound?
Yes, so with the vast majority of applications, the default position is it is approved for 3 years in which to carry out that development, or start the development rather.
Right. There's no further questions for the planning officer, so we'll move on to the speaker. He's been waiting patiently. So, Tarek, I think you know the procedure. I don't need to explain. I think you've been to a planning committee before as well. So, over to yourself.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Tarek, First Choice Investments. We've bought quite a few buildings recently within the town centre and renovated them to a very good standard. We did the RBS Bank facing the Odeon Cinema, and then just close by to this building we bought the nightclub Bamboogie on Yorkshire Street, and the demolition next door to it used to be a designer clothes shop. All these buildings were kind of short and they wouldn't have had much use, so we're bringing them back to life, and where basically there's employment going on. For example, the vault business sits in the ground floor and the basement of the RBS, and then on demolition on Yorkshire Street, it's like a beauty place now. And then like the other ones just finishing off this week. It's been stressful, but we've created 4 flats, and commercial, I think it's going to be hairdressers at the bottom. So we are spending a lot of money and investing a lot of money in the town centre. Obviously we get a return for it, and this building, I think somebody was planning on purchasing it, went in for a place of worship. That's got nothing really to do with us in the sense that we didn't put the planning in. We've purchased it since then, and we will hopefully develop it to a high standard for local professionals to live in. And that's the plan. It won't just be sat there empty. We've got builders on standby already. But yeah, I think some of the other bits as well is some of the councillors that are new, maybe, I don't know, I don't mean to be cheeky, but maybe if there's some kind of simple training that you could provide them with so they understand some of the terms, you know, make it easier for them.
Are we finished? Yeah. So we've got Councillor Davis and then Councillor Hints.
Thanks, Chair. As I was saying, I know the building. It's the one that used to be Street Angels, isn't it? Is it the full building? From where that shutter, the side door is to the blue door on the road.
Yeah, it looks like it. If you look at the front picture from here, you can see where the lower windows are. It looked like it used to be 3 terrace houses at one time anyway, and it's currently just offices. So I don't know what the community aspect of it is anyway, but it's just office space at the moment.
Yeah, it's just to give me an idea of the size of it, because I know how big it was inside.
Yeah, it's the size of 3 terrace houses.
And the upstairs and downstairs.
Just one other point as well, we predominantly like doing apartments. So as an asset that we hold, we prefer to have like apartments instead of HMOs. We have developed HMOs in the past, but we prefer apartments because the outlook at the back wasn't there. This building close by, so we've put the kitchen on the top floor, and we've created quite large rooms, all en-suited, so the occupants have, you know, good standard of living. But otherwise, we probably, if we didn't have a port outlook at the back, as in we can't put windows there for apartments, that's why we've gone with the HMO on this occasion. But we prefer apartments personally.
Councillor Hints.
Thank you, and thank you for giving us the explanation. And I just wanted to personally say I might be a novice as a councillor, so to speak, but I've got over 30 years management in business, and ultimately that's what this is about. I think you suggested there your segment that you were aiming at was young professionals, which is great if we can bring them to the town. Just one question: does this development have shared amenities, so you know, toilets, showers, that sort of thing?
I think I just alluded to that in the previous statement. Basically, we are doing 8 fully ensuited rooms, so there's no shared toilets. The only shared facility is the kitchen. So there's a kitchen dining area where they cook, and sometimes on a lot of them we put prep like cupboards and things like in kitchenettes, small ones within the room if there's room, so they can prep their food and then they just share the kitchen. But yeah, every single one of them would have their own shower, toilet, sink within the room, en-suited.
There's no further questions for the applicant, so we'll move on to the debate. Is there any further questions or any observations from anyone? Councillor Hoban.
Thanks, Chair. My only observation is, I think, to an extent, with a lot of the buildings that we have in the town centre and the way that we want the town centre to be rejuvenated, and some of the top table will frown at me for this, but I think I appreciate that HMOs serve a purpose, and if it works in the town centre, and it should do, and brings more into the town centre, I think, you know, my objections to HMOs are cast aside with this, because the town centre for me is a place where they should be, and hopefully it'll encourage people to come into the town centre again and bring the nightlife and the day life back to where it was.
I mean, Councillor Hoban, I agree with you. I think this is one of the better applications that we've had for a HMO. It brings in investment and economic activity into the town centre. So hopefully, well, Councillor Charters.
Annoyingly, both Councillor Hoban and you, Chair, have both made the points I was going to make. Yeah, this is the sort of place that, if there was going to be, I mean, there's a few of us in here who have been quite vocally against HMO applications in the past, and for me, this is one where it works. I mean, looking at the plans and listening to Tariq talk, it sounds very much to me like student flats when I was at uni. You know, you get your own bathroom, but it's a shared kitchen, and that's the sort of thing we need in the town centre. We've got the transport links, we've got the shopping and the nightlife. It's the perfect place for it, and I'd just like to say that, yeah, this is the one sort of time where I would be very okay with this sort of application. I'll move it if you want, Chair.
Councillor Cosgrove, you second it? Yeah. Shall we move on to all those in favour of the application? I think this must be a first. Unanimous again. So the application. Oh, sorry. Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention. So the application is approved. Thank you. Moving on, item 9. This is the Starkey Hill report. It's not an application, so I'll ask Peter to present that to us. It's actually, we're going to sort of, well, you'll explain, won't you?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So yeah, this is a bit of an unusual item. So just to give a bit of context, first of all, Rochdale Borough Council have received an application from Red Row Homes for, well, a hybrid application for a total of 1,300 dwellings 1,400 dwellings, sorry, get my maths right. 233 of which are for full planning permission, the rest is for outline, as part of a garden village proposal on a site that we call, that is proposed in the Places for Everyone joint development plan as a mixed use allocation to the north or around Starkey Hill industrial estate. So it's quite normal that local authorities consult one another or notify one another when there is an application on or near the boundary. And in this case in particular, given that the proposed allocation in Places for Everyone crosses the boundary, so further south, as I'll show in a moment, the allocation comes into our borough, and that southern part is earmarked for employment under Places for Everyone. But as it's all part of the same allocation, it's quite relevant for them to notify us and consult us and seek our views on the proposal. Ordinarily, when that kind of notification comes in, it's very rare that we would, or any authority in that for that matter, would have any particular concerns on a neighbouring authority's application or application received by a neighbouring authority. Typically, as planning authorities, we all know what we're doing, if you like, and we're happy to let an authority determine their own applications in accordance with their own policies, and that's right and proper. But of course, the reason for notifying us is that if there are any cross-boundary concerns or impacts that we might have a concern about or might support and want to make comments on. So in this particular case, and I say unusually, I've come to the conclusion that I think that it is relevant to make a comment on the application and ultimately raise an objection to the proposal from Red Row Homes. That's the site of the actual application. The yellow shaded bit is where the full planning permission would be. Obviously the outline would cover the rest of the site. And just for context, that's what it looks like at the moment in terms of obviously it's currently in the green belt, but that would be proposed to be removed from the green belt as part of Places for Everyone, as part of the wider allocation. So the reason I proposed that we would make an objection is set out in section 3 of the report, and that is literally the word for word what I would be asking you tonight to agree that we put forward as an objection to the application. And it's really focused on one strategic matter, and that is that as part of a cross-boundary allocation, it's right and proper that whole allocation is planned coherently and together. And indeed, some of the criteria in the proposed policy in Places for Everyone for this site require that. So criteria 3 talks about sustainability, achieving excellent design and sustainability through master planning and the use of design code for the whole site to ensure comprehensive development. Talks about the need for infrastructure phasing and delivery strategy, and those are words that the inspectors have actually recommended be included in this and other policies in Places for Everyone. They see it as important that infrastructure phasing is considered across the whole site, and all of that is required before an application is submitted. Likewise, criteria in the policy require provision for new and improved sustainable transport and highways infrastructure, and improved access arrangements into and around Starkey Hill industrial estate. So the concern I have ultimately is that in the absence of all those things having been done, master planning for the whole allocation, infrastructure planning, transport considerations about what highways improvements are going to be needed because of the cumulative impact of all the development across the whole allocation. Effectively, this application has come in preempting all of that and hasn't given us the evidence to say this is what is needed for the whole allocation. And that's a concern for me, because we want to plan sustainably for the whole allocation. Ourselves and Rochdale are working together as part of the wider Atom Valley proposals, which you'll have heard about. And Starkey Hill, the southern part of Starkey Hill as an employment allocation is key for us and for the wider Atom Valley as an employment opportunity for the whole of the north of Greater Manchester. So it's got to be done right. And if the Redrow application comes in, or has come in early, and if it's approved early or they develop it earlier without all that relevant infrastructure, there is issues potentially arising there. So when we say on these rare occasions where we do propose to object to a neighbouring authority's application, or an application received by a neighbouring authority, the Constitution requires us to bring it to Planning Committee for your consideration and hopefully for your agreement tonight. But obviously, if you don't agree, we can also discuss that. We can discuss the alternatives around that as set out in the report. But ultimately, that's what's before you tonight. That ultimately, the wording in section 3 of the report, the recommendation is that that will be sent to Rochdale Borough Council as an objection against this planning application. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Peter? Councillor Harkness and then Councillor Hints.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. I think you mentioned, I mean, that's what it was going to look like. So obviously all around there, it looks to be it's all green belt, and you said that some of that is proposed, that some of the site is they're planning on taking some of that out on the green belt. There's no mention in the objection about, because some of it looks like it's remaining in the green belt, doesn't it? That there's any the impact that has on the green belt and that sort of thing. So there's nothing mentioned around the green belt in our objection. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, so ultimately, as part of Places for Everyone, we're content as a council that this site as a whole, where the relevant parts of it need to be removed from the green belt. So what's on the screen at the moment, what's the green hatching is the proposed new green belt boundary. What's not shown on there is the fact that virtually all the white area within the red line boundary is currently in the green belt, but is proposed to be removed as part of the Places for Everyone allocation. But obviously, as you say, a small part of it will remain, deliberately so, to have that buffer between the residential and the employment on the site. But the reason we haven't raised greenbelt in terms of our objection is that, as I say, in Places for Everyone, we've accepted the principle that actually the greenbelt does need to be amended in this location to allow the wider development. And indeed, we're not objecting to the principle that Redrow or anyone else could develop housing in the northern part of the allocation. That's in line with the policy. It's simply a case of the application has come in without that benefit of the wider master planning and infrastructure planning for the whole site. And that's a concern for me.
Thank you, Chair. So just to summarise, you're okay with the development and in terms of it being on Greenbelt, etc., but you're upset because you haven't been involved by Rochdale Council in the process. So it's not the development that you've got a problem with or the structure of it, it's the fact you've not been involved.
So you're partly right. So I don't have an objection to the fact that it's development on what is currently Greenbelt, because under Places for Everyone, ourselves and Rochdale Council have already recognised and put forward that this site should be removed from the Greenbelt. So it's the only reason it's still in the Greenbelt is that Places for Everyone hasn't been adopted yet. But the second part of what you're saying is not quite the right interpretation. So it's not. I'm not upset that we haven't been consulted by Redrow or Rochdale, because Rochdale and ourselves are working on this. It's the fact that what's required in the proposed policy in Places for Everyone is that any development on any of this allocation has to work in accordance with a master plan and infrastructure plan, and there isn't one yet. We haven't prepared one yet. Ourselves and Rochdale will work with all the landowners and prospective developers to work one up, but given that it's not even adopted in Places for Everyone yet, effectively this application's come in too soon.
Thank you for that. So I'm just, obviously it's currently Greenbelt, which is currently means it's protected, and that might change when Places for People comes into effect, but it currently isn't, is it? So why are we making decisions based on something that isn't actually, well, enforced?
Okay, so ultimately we're at the stage now in Places for Everyone where it's been the document has been examined by inspectors. They have proposed modifications to the plan, and we are now currently consulting on those modifications as requested to by the inspectors. At this point, therefore, in terms of what is set out in national policy, we are required to give weight to places for everyone in planning decision making, because while it is not quite adopted yet, the fact that it has been examined by the inspectors, that they have broadly found it sound, but with certain modifications that they're proposing, we can therefore give quite significant weight, or substantial weight, to the policies in places for everyone. So in this situation, yes, as I say, right now, this site is in the green belt, but we have to give weight to the fact that under places for everyone, and the stage it is at, it would not be in the green belt anymore. And so again, similarly, we had application before us, I think was it last time or the time before, but Bottomfield Farm, same situation where that was a site currently in the green belt in Oldham, but it's proposed as an allocation for places for everyone, and so the fact that it was in the green belt carried less weight, if you like, because places for everyone was already proposing to release it from the green belt.
So my final point is, I mean, it sounds to me like we're cutting up the cake before we put it in the oven. But if, for any instance, there's some modifications for the places for everyone or whatever it's termed as, it's land grab for me. But if that changes, does that become null and void?
So, if Rochdale Council were to grant permission for this proposal, then that permission is there, no matter what happens with places for everyone. However, what I'm trying to get across is that because the inspectors have already examined or held the hearings, they've considered this site, they have not proposed any modifications to the greenbelt boundary on this site as proposed in place of everyone. You know, we have that level of comfort, which is why we have to give weight to it, that actually the inspectors consider this allocation to be sound. And the modifications they've proposed are more about the detail within the policy wording, things like I mentioned around the infrastructure phasing and delivery strategy, that they would want to see more on that kind of matter before any application was determined across any part of the site. So, yes, ultimately, as I say, it's in the green belt now, but we have to give weight to the fact that it is going to be, that the Places for Everyone is proposing to remove it from the green belt.
Are there any further observations or questions for Councillor Charters?
Sorry, Chair, I can't resist being in these meetings and not making a couple of contributions. I think Councillor Hintz actually hit the nail on the head when he said we're cutting up the cake before putting it in the oven, but that's what Red Row are doing. They've decided that they're going to do an application and sort of try and set the standard rather than wait for the standard to be set and then work towards it. And I think the proposal from Peter's very sensible in that we should just wait until it's done before we decide what's been done with it. So yeah, I think this is a very sound objection from the council. Again, if no one else wants to speak, I'll move it.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just sorry, one quick. What's Rochdale Council's view on this, or have they not said
well,
yet?
They've not considered the application.
No, I know, but have the officers?
But
do you know if they're going to object?
Come on, Councillor.
Well, I've got to ask.
You know better.
I've got to ask.
You can't expect the. We can't be able to answer that question, can we? So, Rochdale still have to consider this application. So therefore, we will have to wait and see what their decision is. But what we're saying is that we're going to object to it, and do members. Well, we've had a move. Yeah, it's been seconded. So I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour of the objection, please raise your hands. I think that's unanimous. So that's recommend. Also, Peter, you can go ahead with the objection to Rochdale and write to him. And the last item on the agenda is appeals update report. Peter?
Just for noting. So.
That's for noting, so you can all read in your spare time or bedtime to see what's been approved, what's been rejected, etc., and which new applications have come in. That's the end of the meeting, and thank you for supporting me today. Councillor Hoban, you can chair the rest of it now.
Oh, I managed to annoy enough people anyway.